I think, well, think about Yo-Yo Ma, okay? Think about what he does as a musician. He talks about how he's always practicing. He's always aiming to get better. He also said, I think I'm like 99% sure, because I share this with my students all the time, that we only perform at 70% of our best. So that's why like professional musicians, when they get out on stage, they practice so much, so their 70% is way up here. You know what I mean? So their best is way up here, so their 70% is way up here. The same thing happens for us. I think that, I think that I think people think that the practicing is not the end game. Well, it's not the end game. I mean, like the performance is not necessarily the end game. The performance is just a benchmark of that level of practice you have had, right? So I don't think that like even the performance is the final outcome. I think it's just a checkpoint to see where you're at as you continue to develop.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Everything Band, a podcast that features conversations with composers, conductors, and performers of music for winds and percussion. My name is Mark Connor. I'm a composer and educator, and each week I have the good fortune to speak with and share the stories and wisdom of musicians and leaders in the band community. The Everything Band podcast is a proud member of the Music Teachers Development Podcast Network. The Muted Network provides support in the form of audio-on-demand programming designed by and for music educators. You can find more information about our network at mutedpodcasts.com. Before we begin, I'd like to thank Jake Walker and Colin Peters for their contributions to the show, and especially to all of you who are listening. I appreciate your time and hope that you are finding value from these interviews. I rely on word of mouth and social media to bring the show to new listeners. If you think you know one or two people who might find these interviews useful, please let them know about it. You can also help by following me and sharing posts on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Remember, help your students live up to the best that is in them through music. And now on to my next guest, Jared Cassedy. Hi, Jared.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going really well. Thanks for joining the show.
Well, I'm super psyched to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Seriously.
Absolutely. So, Jared, you are well known, particularly in the Northeast, but you also have a particularly great honor to your name. But could you introduce yourself for the listeners so they know who they're listening to?
Of course. My name is Jared Cassedy. I'm the K-12 Performing Arts Coordinator in Lexington, Massachusetts, where I'm also the band director, one of the band directors at the high school. I'm also the conductor of the Junior Massachusetts Youth Wind Ensemble, which is at the new England Conservatory Music Preparatory School. Lexington is about like just about 15, 20 minutes outside of Boston. It's a wonderfully diverse community that supports high quality education, well-rounded education with their kids. It's so supportive of the arts. I've been there for about 3 years. I still live in New Hampshire. So I've been here in Lexington now for about 3 years. And I was 12 years in Windham, New Hampshire, and then 2 years in Salem, which is actually where I grew up. It was interesting in that job because I was the supervisor of music. And I was actually now the supervisor of my old music teachers when I was a student. So that was interesting, kind of paradigm shift, if you will.
Yeah.
It's been awesome going to Lexington. They have a fantastic program, and I'm just so happy to be there.
How far is Lexington from where you live in New Hampshire?
Oh, gosh. So I live in Bedford, New Hampshire. So I would say it's about, without traffic, now you have to know something about Boston traffic. Without traffic, it's about 45 minutes. But with traffic, it can be anywhere from an hour to 3 hours, depending on when the traffic is. Like if I leave school or if I don't have any performances at night that I've got to go to or whatnot, it could take me like 3 hours to get home if I leave at like 4:30 or 5.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So it's a good thing that I have a lot of events to go to at night, because by that point the traffic's died down,
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, it is. But it's well worth it. It's an incredible performing arts department. It's an incredibly supportive, like I always say, an incredibly supportive school district. They have amazing things going on in this district.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So, Jared, can you tell me a little bit about how you got into music? What's your origin story?
Oh, man. So I've thought about this a lot, especially over the course of my education and just looking back over the years. I think that when it came to becoming a music teacher, it all started with my parents, actually. I'm one of 4 children, and they're all older than me. My parents really wanted us to be well-rounded people. So we all played sports. We all took art lessons. We all played an instrument. We all took piano lessons. They were a firm believer of like having us touch touch a whole bunch of different activities, everything from, I remember being part of karate and, a variety of things. So it came from there. I started piano lessons when I was 5 years old. And then I played in the band. I played clarinet after my sister, actually. And I started that in 5th grade. And that I guess it came from like middle school is when I first started thinking about, I love this. This is just like what I want to do with my life. I love playing piano, even though piano and clarinet was very different. Piano was very serious. My teacher was exceptionally high standards, very, very, very direct. And it was a regimented program that I was part of. But band, what I loved about that, it was about collaboration. It was about just so much joy. And going into high school, that's where I think the magic actually happened for me directly. I had this amazing band director, Marty Clausen, who is still at Salem High School. Like I was saying, I was his supervisor for the 2 years I was in Salem. And he transformed my approach to music outside of it just being about the actual music making process and execution of notes and rhythms, but about the community that really evolves and develops you as a person, which is pretty amazing. And so that's how I got into it. And I became a drum major of the Salem High School Marching Band. It's a pretty competitive marching band, at least for the Northeast. I remember being part of we went to the Fiesta Bowl, they went to the Rose Bowl, Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. There's so many opportunities there for those students and for myself when I was there. And so I went to school for music education. And I landed my first job back in 2004, 2005 in Windham, New Hampshire. So essentially, music has been such a big part of my life, and I do credit my parents and my family for being so supportive. Ironically, Mark, when I told my parents that I wanted to become a middle school band director, when I wanted to become a band director when I was in middle school, they were very much are you sure? Is there another career path? Because, they were really concerned about being able to make money to sustain a job. Back then in the 80s and 90s, the arts programs kind of being cut here and there and things like that. And ironically, everybody in my family, including my grandparents, everybody was an educator. Everybody's in education, except for my brother. He's a real estate guy. But it's ironic, they were so rooted in education. But when I said I wanted to go into music education, they were definitely apprehensive for me. Yeah.
So you said something in there about that you knew in middle school that you wanted to be in music. That's a question I typically ask on the show, and I'm curious how you knew so early.
I think it's because what's funny is that when I was in middle school, I had started the clarinet in 5th grade, but when I first came into 6th grade, the middle school band only rehearsed during lunchtime. Okay. And when I started clarinet in 5th grade, there was no ensembles. It was only pure lessons, small group lessons. Okay. So then middle school comes along, and just sitting amidst a large number of students, looking back, it wasn't the largest number, but for me at that time, being there to collaborate and just hearing this music, the sound, it just completely got to me. And to know that I was contributing to that sound was transformative in every respect. It was very different than me playing piano and stuff, where that's more of a solo instrument and things like that. I had never been part of an ensemble in this way. And I think that the art just kind of spoke to me. That seems kind of cheesy or whatnot, but just hearing that music, hearing the sound, the sonority of those chords and stuff, it totally changed my approach to music, literally within the first rehearsal that I had in 6th grade.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Yeah. Okay. So now you also mentioned that your parents wanted you to be really well-rounded, but you started the piano at 5. Did you continue with the piano all the way through?
All the way through. So I was part of the National Guild Piano Teachers Federation, if you will. So we had a yearly test. So from 5 years old all the way until my senior year of high school, I went through a pretty rigorous jury performance assessment at the end of every year. Ironically, it was at UMass Lowell every year. We would go and I'd be adjudicated by a judge, give me feedback on my playing. We had to do 10-piece memorized programs, plus sight reading and scales and cadences. And it was pretty intense. And I love my skill development through that entire time as a pianist. But I do have to say, it's the one aspect of my music education that I think I still carry with me when it comes to anxiety and that kind of stress and pressure. And I think it's been interesting to see myself as an educator now and my own philosophies, how they've kind of evolved and changed from that really, really strict, somewhat perfectionist kind of life I was leading as a pianist,
Sure.
So
but clarinet was your instrument in college? or piano?
No, so when I went to college, actually, I played clarinet all the way through from middle school into high school. And I actually, when I auditioned for music schools, I auditioned only on piano. Okay. And so I got in, I ended up going to the University of New Hampshire. That's another long story for another day. I love the school, but I got there and I started playing clarinet. I still wanted to play in the ensembles, and the clarinet professor at that time touched base with me because I auditioned for some of the other upper wind ensembles. He's like, you should take some lessons, and that evolved. In my sophomore year, I ended up kind of having two principal instruments of piano and clarinet, which I find very, very it's really good in terms of my chops and my training as a music educator today.
How much do you use it, and what are the uses that you find for such well advanced piano skills?
Oh my gosh. So as an ensemble director, especially, it's easy to lay out chord progressions to support my students. I use it to transpose parts. I do some arranging underneath the students, even during warm-ups. I remember even as a middle school band director, we'd be doing the essential elements or certain exercises from the book, but I would come up with extra more engaging kind of background tracks. Now we have smart music and things like that do similar things, but it's always so wonderful to go over to the piano and just plunk out, this is the trumpet line, and so they can hear it in a different kind of way. I really focus a lot on theory when it comes to chord progressions, intervals, and that kind of training within the context of musical compositions and things like that. So I use it as a tool quite a bit, actually, to kind of reach students on that theoretical level, and also just hear them to simplify what they're hearing within the context of a large-scale work, take for instance. So it's helpful in that respect, definitely.
You said you had a wonderful high school director, and you went to the University of New Hampshire, and you mentioned a little bit. What was your experience there like?
Wow. So here I am as a music educator thinking about my alma mater. I think that UNH had an amazing program. I am so thankful to the professors, the people I went to school with. They're still so many of my closest friends. I do want to let you know what's ironic is that it was probably my sophomore year of college. I almost decided to quit being a music major, and I was actually going to switch majors. So I'd gone through, as I explained, the whole entire piano regimen with the National Guild, and I was playing clarinet in the band, and I thought those two experiences were very different. Piano was a very serious, direct education versus being in the band. And when I was in high school, yes, we were a competitive marching band, but Mr. Clausen made it so community-based, and he was such a father figure, and he was so much compassion, and there was so much investment in each other. It was a beautiful thing. We just came together, and we always tried our best as an ensemble. We knew each other. We grew into relationships. It was awesome. Flash forward to me going into music school. I'm excited to now focus my entire energies into music making, develop my skill, continue playing in ensembles. At UNH is a state school. It's not like I was going to Eastman or Juilliard or things like that, but it was so competitive. Okay. And I think it was also competitive because I'm not competitive with other people. I'm competitive within myself. And Mark, I would find myself literally playing piano and practicing until 2 or 3 in the morning in my piano professor's studio, just going over stuff because I didn't feel I was at that level. I didn't feel like my technique was where it's supposed to be. I didn't feel so throughout this entire thing, my clarinet playing, I was really excited about that. But even there, because I wasn't a clarinet major at the time, it was just a lot of pressure. And it's not that anybody said anything to me directly. It's just this constant feeling of I'm not good enough. I got to be a performer, And so it was honestly taking all that love that I had for the experience of music making I had when I was in high school and taking that away from me. And I was like, I don't want to end up in a situation where I am resentful of something that has become such a huge part of me. So it was probably my sophomore year. It was my sophomore year. I had gone to my college advisor, who was also the head of the music ed program. And I was like, Mark, this other guy, Mark, said to him, I've got to switch out. I think I'm going to go to a career in psychology or sociology. I've always been interested in how people interact and human interactions and how the brain works and things like that. And he's like, well, what's going on, Jared? You came into our program so excited about music education, becoming a teacher. I was like, I'm just not there as a musician. He's like, but Jared, you understand, you're going for a music education degree. And we had this program that year called Ed 500. It was an exploratory program. And I wish that, I think this is taken on a more trend in colleges and universities, where music ed majors are placed in front of students as early as possible, whether it be giving group lessons, whether it be teaching practice lessons to public school students, things like that. And what Mark said to me, he's like, Jared, you're playing of clarinet, you're playing of piano, that's one thing. But your performance instrument is your teaching. Because he had seen me teach many times. He had been in my classes. He was my main advisor for the music education program as well. So he had many instances to see me teach. He's like, when you are working with kids, that is your instrument and that is your performance. And it totally kind of like made something click. I was placing so much emphasis, and of course, performance is important, and your skills as a performer, as an instrumentalist, as a vocalist are important to becoming a music educator. But for me, like he said, again, I think that reinforced to me this idea, and that's what Mr. Clausen, my high school band director, did. He wanted us, of course, to have high expectations with performance, but he also wanted us to be high quality people. And that's where education, I think, starts. My shift, and here I am on a band podcast, a music educator podcast saying this, but I feel like music is that on-ramp to helping people develop who they are. I think that we as music teachers are technically educators first. If you look at our world right now, where we're in COVID times and the pandemic, we can't make music the same way. So we have to focus on those relationships and connections and the teaching aspect, the true educational benefits for our students that extend far beyond just the performance aspect. And so it's amazing how that one conversation turned things around. And I'm a firm believer that things happen for a reason, truly happen for a reason. And I'm so grateful to him for listening to me instead of just being like, yep, you're right, switch majors or whatnot. He took the time for me to help me sort this out. And looking back now, I'm 38 years old and this is my 17th year in education. And I couldn't be any happier with the career I'm in.
Yeah. No, that's great. So I want to ask you about you talked about teaching early. What do you think are the benefits of that for music educators?
I think it gives you a direct insight into the actual pragmatic mechanics of teaching. When we leave our programs as seniors in college, or if you get a master's in education, you go to the classroom for your first job teaching. Ironically, it's not always the music and the conducting and the repertoire and the rehearsals that are the hardest, most challenging part. What's the challenging part is like the stuff they don't teach you necessarily in college, which is basically, the stress of students and handling different personalities and handling their parents and working with other administrators and other teachers and developing lesson plans and curriculum and scope and sequence. It's all those things. And I think that what I loved about the program at UNH is that it gave me they put us right in there right away. So it was my sophomore year, after I had talked to my professor, it was that 500 program where we were driven to local area middle schools and elementary schools, and we were given group lessons. They videotaped us right from the very beginning. We had to do lesson plans right from the very beginning. And it gave us that big taste of like, it's not just about, preparing an ensemble to play Gustav Holst or Granger. It's about like the mechanics of actually interacting and developing relationships with your students. And for, developing a rapport and establishing, your goals and your beliefs as an educator. And I think that's super important for students as they prepare for a career in music education.
After New Hampshire, after the university, did you go right into student teaching or did you get a master's? I mean, what was your next step?
So I was originally going to go my master's. I want to get my master's in conducting, but I also know that school was really expensive. So I actually started, I applied for a job right out of school. And ironically, it was the town next to where I grew up in Windham. Windham and Salem are right next to each other. And what's so funny is that Windham students used to go to Salem High School. So a lot of my friends in high school were from Windham. So here I am, I apply for this job, and yeah, it was an incredible experience. I actually heard about the job. I was looking for an apartment, and the person showed me around. Her son was a student at Windham Middle School, and I got my first break there. The principal, what I loved is that this principal, Steve, he, during my interview, sat down with me, and he asked me the most amazing questions. I know it seems weird because it's like a job interview, but I was amazed that there was questions about he genuinely asked questions about music repertoire selection and about what the value of music education is to students. It was like a very philosophical conversation versus just, can you do the job? Here are your responsibilities. How have you navigated challenging times? It was that plus so much more. And it showcased like the kind of emphasis he placed on quality education in all content areas. Yeah.
So I know we have a lot of young listeners, young band directors who listen to this show. What was that first job like? What were your experiences in the first couple of years? Those years that we all remember.
Right. So as you can probably tell, I talk fast. I'm a pretty energetic person, and I try to slow myself down. my first year teaching would be how I'm talking right now times like 50. I was a lot of high energy, getting right in there. Those students, I don't think were prepared for someone like me, because I like the fact that I think it was great that I was younger too, coming around of college. They were able to relate to me. But it was the most difficult, challenging, and most exciting and enthusiastic job I've ever had. I still remember that first year. I love what I do now, but there'll be nothing that takes me away from that first year of teaching that in that position. It's funny because ironically, and I'm going to say this freely, that first quarter that I taught there at Wyndham Middle School, I ended up failing almost 3/4 of the band. There were 3 ensembles, 6th grade, 7th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. And those students were like, their expectations were like handing in work. We did assignments, we did rhythm stuff and things like that. And it's funny because I had a lot of my colleagues being like, Jared, you got to watch out. The parents in this town, because Wyndham is a very high performing, like pretty intense community. They expect a lot and they want their kids to do really well. And what I love is that I think it comes back to the idea with my old high school band director and what I talked about with my college advisor, this idea of making connections and relationships with the kids. So the kids, at the end, I communicated with the parents so much, from doing welcome letters to weekly check-ins. I would invite parents into our rehearsals from day one just to check things out. Plus, they also wanted to see me because I was a new director and stuff. So by the time our first concert came around to December, the winter concert, it was like I was so nervous. And I was so thrilled, though, at the end of that concert, having so many parents coming up to me being like, whoa, we just didn't realize that music could evolve this way. And you have brought so much energy and excitement. I think it was just a wonderful thing. And it made me realize that I'm not just teaching students. I'm not just teaching the students that are in my ensembles or they're my general music classes. I'm working with a full community here. You know, music programs have the opportunity to really, really anchor a community. And I think that that's where I've realized that lesson. So for those young band directors out there, it's not just about doing the job. It's about inviting people in to do it with you. You know, so I think that was a beautiful thing. The administration, it became such a collaboration. And so when I moved from the middle school position, I was also the first high school band director at Wyndham High School. Like I said, the students used to go to Salem High School. Wyndham opened up in 2009, a brand new high school, only with freshmen and sophomores first. I moved up as their first band director. And it was so clear. I was excited to be a high school band director, but I was beyond like scared, just because it's like there's a lot of weight on my shoulders here right now. There's a high expectation in this community. And again, it comes down to that first year was all about developing relationships with the community, the new administration, really, really laying down a foundation that was communal and collective with parents and administrators and other colleagues about what we wanted this high school band program to be like. And I think that's where the growth and the success of that program really laid from. You know, it's amazing what you can do, what kind of outcomes happen when you're able to collaborate and connect in that way. So
Jared, you mentioned that you opened up the high school, and the first year you only had freshmen and sophomores. What was that like to build it as those kids became juniors and seniors, and then you had your first full class come through? What was that evolution like for someone who might not have ever experienced that?
It is like nothing you will ever experience. And it was an atypical situation. I was so happy to be part of that because the sophomores had come back from Salem High School. They had already experienced the same high school band program that I was a part of when I was in high school with Mr. Clausen. So those kids came back and they're like, oh, you know, it's a very big marching band school. Wyndham High School opened up and it's a smaller school. Like Salem High School had 2,300, 2,400 kids that had it. It was huge. Coming back, Wyndham started off with like 400 kids, 500 kids. So, but what I did, I think what was really good about that is that the kids that came from Salem, I was able to take their thoughts and perspectives. We developed, I am a very strong proponent in student leadership, and it's not about assigning roles and responsibilities and titles. I really believe that every student has the capability of being a leader every day. Every person does in their lives. And so I put us to task, and we spent so much time in that summer before that school year started, and then throughout the year, really meeting on a continual basis to reevaluate our core beliefs and values. I am all about student voice. I'm all about student agency. repertoire selection, the way the rehearsals are run, sectionals. Like you will come into my rehearsals even today, and I rarely do a typical sit in front of me rows of students and have a regular rehearsal. There's usually like weird formats and setups. Kids are leaving the room to work in small groups. I have students coming up in front of the band. I many times I bring my entire trumpet section up. Take for instance, they stand behind me. So while we continue to rehearse, so they get different perspectives on how they're hearing things. I think it was kind of that. And that came out of discussions I had with the students. So as those students that were freshmen and sophomores got older, they helped to pave that shared vision and mission with me for those next level of students. So there was that level of expectation that naturally came. And then along with that, as students and also myself, we continue to act as ambassadors to the middle school and elementary students, continuously meeting with them, with their director, keeping that communication and collaboration going across grade spans, which is super, super important. It's not just what happens at the high school program. It's about how things are developed from the elementary program all the way up. And then to see that first group of kids graduate in 2012, those seniors, it was the first group of kids I had when they were sixth graders, all the way through 12th grade, with the exception of the year they were a freshman at another school. It was magical. And, we built that program. And I think that, we ended up, we had kids getting into All-State and All-Nationals. We went to Carnegie Hall. This was all within the first few years of the school opening up, because I think the kids took so much pride and energy in what we were doing. And the best part is, Mark, people ask me this all the time, especially in Lexington, because Lexington is like a very, very high-performing school district with an exceptionally high-performing performing arts program. And I'm going to talk about this later on, I'm sure. But I would say only a handful of kids took private lessons in Wyndham. I ended that when I left Wyndham, there was about 120 kids in the band program, maybe a little less. And we had kids that were all national level sitting next to kids that had just picked up an instrument. I remember I had this girl, Emma, who played French horn. She had never been in band, never done anything. She was a beautiful singer, but she'd never been in band, played an instrument. She was like, she wanted to be in the band because her sister was in it. And I was like, play the French horn. So which is a really hard instrument to start, especially your freshman year. 6 months later, she's on stage with us at Carnegie Hall. You know what I mean? And it's sounding beautiful. You know what I mean? So these kids have again, when you have a shared vision and you have that support system, the world is at your fingertips,
Yeah, that the support system, of course, but the thing about the vision, I think maybe that's something that sets a lot of directors apart. How did you develop your vision, and what recommendations might you have for someone who wants to develop a vision for their program?
You got to get back to your own core values and beliefs as a musician and as an educator. I use my experience all the time. I look back at my stress levels going through those national piano testing, to my stress level when I was in college, feeling the way I did as a pianist. And I was like, my goal is to use my experience I'm going to use my experience to inform my practices. And I do that even today. I'm still developing as an educator based on the experiences I've had as an educator, as a musician myself. And I'm still informing myself from that in a way that I want to ensure that the students have the best quality education possible. And it comes from your own experience first. And then on top of that, you can't create a vision just by yourself. I know some people can say that they do. I am, again, a huge proponent of relationships and developing connections. When it's shared, you just feel that energy, and that energy fuels other people to feel that energy, and it becomes part of that ripple effect that enables that vision to kind of come to fruition, That's
really interesting. The one thing that struck me, well, there's two things that struck me actually, is the first is you talked about, your vision comes from your core beliefs as a musician and an educator. And you gave some examples there, but I think this is really important. I know that I'm not sure how many music educators have actually sat down and really thought through what it is they believe and sort of cemented it down, because I think that helps a lot. It guides all your decisions.
Absolutely. And also keep in mind, it does evolve.
Of course.
My core beliefs and values as an educator evolved very much so after my first year of teaching, and it's continued to evolve to where I am today. It just it's kind of been reinforced in so many other ways, that where I am now in my career, what I do with it as an educator, it really is foundational to who I am, which is pretty. What I love is looking back at my years and being like, yeah, I made some mistakes here, I had some challenges here, but it's led me to where I am right now. I think that it evolves over time.
Yeah. You can't know how to teach unless you know why you teach.
100%. Yes. Yeah.
The other thing that you said in there was the idea of collaborating to create the vision. Can you give me some examples of some of who you're collaborating with in your current place?
Yeah, of course. So every time, so I've had the opportunity to change my career, not my career, my position, my job a couple times. So every time I do that, the first thing I do is sit down with the stakeholders. So when I started working in Lexington, I sat down individually with the other band directors, the other chorus directors, all that individually. And I just wanted to hear what they thought about what their program is. I would ask, how do you feel about the program? Not about what your program does, but how do you feel about it? And what are the things that you are most proud of, and what are the things you want to continue to grow and elevate? Providing them a space to really unpack kind of that. And it's funny because so many of them, when I did this, when I was in where I am in Lexington, where I was in Salem, and also when I was developing the program in Wyndham, people were like, no one's asked me that before. And it gave them pause to be a little bit more reflective and mindful and thoughtful about where they are and where they see themselves within the construct of the organization. And I think that in itself enabled them to have voice and to have meaning and to be heard and listened to. You know, Mark, I always say at the end of the day, people want to feel valued, cared for, and supported. And it's three simple things. It leads to like just basic human interaction goes a long way. And so when you do that, it's amazing how much more open people become, how much more they'll listen, how much more they'll contribute and offer and help to shape that vision. So here in Lexington, I've only been here for 3 years. There's been so many wonderful shifts that have happened. And it's not just because of me being here, but I think it's just providing teachers and students the space to open this up. I want to share one anecdote with you. Is a perfect example of this with a student, my first year in Lexington. So Lexington, I love all these students. They are like the greatest kids in the world. They are amazingly hardworking, and they do not at all flex about their abilities. They are so humble in all that they do. And I remember working with the Wind Ensemble, and I remember when I actually first got the job in Lexington, my friends in New Hampshire were like, what are you going to do in Lexington? They're like one of the nation's best performing arts programs and one of the best wind ensembles ever. I'm like, oh, yeah, you know. So I go into those first rehearsals, and within that first week of rehearsals, I knew exactly what my mission had to be. These kids play at an exceptionally high level. However, in conversations, especially with the older students, because most of them are in the students in Wind Ensemble are older because they're more advanced musicians. They were like, Mr. Cassedy, band is not supposed to be quote unquote enjoyable. It's our job. It's our work. It's our goal. It's our responsibility to make this music sound as perfect as possible. You know, and it's an eye-opening experience because I was like, whoa, where's the joy? Where's the joy when it comes to just like, you know, they're like, I would ask questions like, oh, this is that to that student, one of my flute players. I was like, so what's the intent of the composer right now? What are we trying to convey emotionally, expressly? I asked a lot of questions, and it came to a point where this girl was like, Mr. Cassedy, just tell us how you want us to play it, and we're going to play it that way for you. And I was like, what? You're missing out on like a majority of what the music process and music making experience is all about, you know? So through that experience, opening up that conversation and unpacking that, you know, I kept challenging them. And it's something they were not used to, I don't think, in that way. I don't want to work with a compliant set of students. And I would tell them this all the time. This is your music. This is your opportunity. This is your experience. You should be involved in as much of it as possible, you know? And it's amazing to see how those conversations evolved. You know, I got emails from students after the first concert. Now I was used to in Wyndham having a concert pretty much every, like maybe 2-3 concerts a year. In Wyndham, we have like 5 or 6 concerts a year. It's a lot of concerts. But after that first concert that happened in October, we only had a few weeks. They were like, Mr. Cassedy, I've never felt so good about music. I was like, oh my God, that said something to me. And I think that in itself helped them to kind of start thinking about, okay, where are we going with this program? What am I doing as a music? What's my role? Like, what is music? What is it? And now 3 years later, to continue having these conversations, what I love is that not only is the music making experience that much more enjoyable, I think, for the kids and also for myself, but the investment they have in each other. Holy cow, Mark. It's like you walk in, if you talk about culture, you walk into a room, you can just feel it. And same thing with this ensemble. Even on Zoom, as we're remotely learning right now, you can still feel that energy happening, which I really, really appreciate. So again, it's about allowing the space to have that conversation and enabling people to have agency over what they want to offer, you know?
Yeah. So you did mention human interaction a little bit ago, and then you just mentioned Zoom. How has that been going this year? I know in my conversations with other band directors and in my own experience, it's a lot of the students, and I would teach very young students, are really struggling to feel any sort of the normal, because what am I trying to say? There's not the normal like rallying points. There was no concert where they could feel good about themselves. And I'm sort of have a lot that are losing interest. How are things going for you?
So for me personally, I do know that teachers in our department and teachers in our district are struggling. And I struggle. I'm not saying that I don't struggle. I definitely struggle through this time because it's true. Everything's so stripped away. What I do focus on though is I guess I'm a kind of a stoic in the sense of I don't think about it as toxic positivity, but stoic in the sense of, okay, we're in this situation. I have a choice right now how I'm going to approach this. I can change my mindset. I can stay negative and be like, this is horrible. Or I can change my mindset and be like, okay, what do we have here? What can I work with? And so I really focus on redefining and reimagining the curriculum. And I tell my students that, okay, we might not be playing our instruments as much, and you might not be able to make as much musical growth technically on your instrument, but there's another side of music education and instrumental music education specifically that does not involve making music physically on your instrument. Okay. So it's about how to conceptualize music, how to articulate what composer intent is, what our intent is, how to listen, how to, so we've taken the time, because we have the time now, to take a step back from worrying about the high quality level of performance and really focusing on what does music mean to me. For myself, we focus on two big things. We've had a wonderful collaboration with another music educator. His name's Dr. Matthew Arau with Upbeat Global Music, who is doing a collaboration with a surrounding town and us around student leadership. So again, he's reinforcing all these skills. We've been doing panel discussions. We actually today just had a collaboration with our neighboring, our sister school with Dr. Arau. So we made student leadership and understanding our roles and contributions as ensemble members centralized to our curriculum this year in a way that we wanted to transcend music and band. Music and band is the on-ramp to this because these skills and tools are going to enable you to develop as a human being just in general. The other aspect that I've been focusing on greatly is using music as an on-ramp to having conversations that are contextual to the students. And that sounds really wordy. It probably is really wordy. Basically, I'm really deliberate with selecting repertoire. So even though we're not having performances, and we've dabbled with some virtual recordings and things like that, not to the extent some other directors have, but we're still rehearsing music, and we're working right now on Omar Thomas's Of Our New Day Begun, as I think people really know that piece of music, of course. But what we've done is use that. It's been incredible to have this piece of music open up conversations directly related and directly centered on race, directly centered on the political landscape that we're currently living in, to be really focused on, what does this mean to me? Ironically, the piece of music, as you know, is focused on the shootings in South Carolina at the AME Emmanuel Church. But contextualizing it, my wind ensemble, it's a diverse community. We have a lot of Asian students, a lot of Indian students, but we do not have any African-American students in that ensemble at this time. That's another thing I want to change in the future, of course. But my question to them is, how can we contextualize what Omar Thomas is trying to say here in this piece of music? It's not just to honor those people. It's actually like a call to action when it comes to human and civil rights. How can we contextualize ourselves here? And through our discussions, I think some people are really nervous about having conversations about race and social justice issues in class. But these kids are hungry and ready for it. So this piece of music has really opened up conversations around, everything from not only African-American rights, but also about LGBTQ rights and about xenophobia for the Asian community, especially with regards to COVID-19. We've been able to share our experiences. It's opened their eyes up to music in a different way. And so when they are rehearsing the piece and working on their parts, they have a different lens to see it through.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. It's really what we're talking about a little bit earlier about knowing the why about what you're teaching. So you've turned the why into making these kids better human beings, and you're finding ways to do it within our constraints.
Absolutely, 100%. And I think that that's a beautiful thing. And the kids, I think, really appreciate it. So we are going to be doing a whole entire virtual, not just a virtual recording, but a presentation where they're going to add their own commentary, and it's going to be really a wonderful thing for our community in general. But again, I think that's one way we've been able to navigate it. Of course, do I miss rehearsing with a full ensemble in front of me and not having to wear masks and all this stuff? And yeah, of course. But at the same time, there is some good that's come out of it because we've had the space to really, really dive deep into some of these conversations.
So Jared, you mentioned you've been at a couple different places. Let's just quickly go through that. So you started in Windham, am I correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
And was there an intermediate stop between Windham and Lexington?
Yes, it was in Salem, New Hampshire. So Windham, I was there for 12 years, and then my alma mater, Salem High School, called me. The superintendent of schools there is amazing. And was like, Jared, we're opening this brand new state-of-the-art performing arts center. So Salem High School was an old 1960s school, never renovated. It was just like, so they actually renovated. They went through millions and trillions of, not trillions, but tons of money to renovate the entire school. And along with that, they integrated a brand new performing arts facility called Salem Performing Arts Center. They wanted someone to spearhead that project, and also work with the performing arts teachers. They had never had an administrator that worked for the performing arts department that was, directly related to performing arts. So he was like, you've done such amazing things in Windham. We would love to have you come aboard here. You'd be working with your teachers that you had, which is so wonderful. They're all amazing teachers over there, of course. And I was at a point where I was like, yeah, Windham's been so wonderful to me. But this opportunity, was great. The only thing though, Mark, is that there was no teaching component at all with Salem. And that, as much as Marty, the band director, Mr. Clausen, was saying he wanted me to come in and all this stuff, it was not that consistent, direct connection with students. I was definitely connecting with students. I took the time absolutely across the district to work with them. But it was just killing me to not have a consistent ensemble I could work with. So it came to a point where I was like, oh gosh, I love working here, but I'm missing that aspect. I was still working at, had the job at England Conservatory, but then Lexington called, one of the former coordinators, performing arts coordinators, called and said, we need a performing arts director. We really want you to come in. Now, ironically, before I came to Salem, I had actually applied for Lexington's coordinator position, and I did not get the job. So it was just funny. I went through 2 years there, and then all of a sudden they called me saying that there was a change and they wanted me to come aboard. So yeah, I interviewed down there, and it was amazing. It was an amazing experience, definitely.
Yeah, no doubt. And so now the couple things that I want to talk about. You were named the Outstanding Band Director of the Year in New Hampshire, or the Outstanding Young Band Director of the Year in 2011. 2011,
yep, that's correct.
And you were nominated for Teacher of the Year in 2014.
Yep, that's correct.
But the big thing is you were the recipient of the 2015 GRAMMY Music Educator Award.
Yes, that was the most wild ride and the most insane time of my life by far.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
So it's been crazy. I still don't believe that the award is directly for me. What I really think, though, what I appreciate so much that the Grammy, it's now the Grammy Museum. The Grammy Foundation switched now. They're called the Grammy Museum. What I love is that they're spotlighting music education. So 2015, that was the second year they had the award. Ken Nappenberger won it the first year. He's a wonderful guy. And they're putting a spotlight on the profession of music education and what it does for our nation. It's about advocacy. It's about supporting students. There are hundreds of thousands of amazing music educators across the nation, across the globe. And, this award recognition could be easily given to anyone, even people I know easily, so easily. But that process was pretty phenomenal. I was nominated by one of my students and their mother and his mother. So it was Tim Raymond and his mother, Christina. Salt of the earth people. They were, he was a percussionist in my band in Windham. Amazing. And I was like, this is great. So I did the application. It was a survey and some written documentation and stuff. And I was like, okay, we'll see what happens. And next thing you know, it was, I think it was like a few months later, because it happened in November. And then it was in April, I found I was a semifinalist. So it came down from around 10,000 people, maybe a little less than 10,000 people, down to 224. Then it got really busy. We had to do all these videos and commentaries and things like that. That was wonderful process in itself, though. As hard as it was really good because it gave me a really direct focus on reflecting on myself as an educator, on my experience, on my philosophies and everything. And I credit my technical director and good friend, Rick Sweetser, put it together. He's amazing. The videos and stuff. So those were submitted. And then it was a couple months later. It was the following year. So that's 2014. 2014 in the fall, I got the call saying I was a top 25 finalist. So that was crazy. And then from there, I was announced as a top 10. However, said they were going to just announce this, that the head of the Grammy Foundation was just going to touch base with us and just to congratulate us. And then I was literally in the middle of a school board meeting advocating for our music budget in Wyndham because they were making some cuts in Wyndham or whatnot. And they knew I had to leave for the meeting. And it was at that meeting, in the middle of that meeting, I found out that I was being named the award recipient. It was so ironic because here I am trying my best to advocate for this music program and for getting the support we need financially to keep it going. And then I got that award, and it was thrilling. That experience, they brought me out there for 10 days in LA during Grammy week. I met some of the most amazing people, celebrities everywhere, of course, yes, but more importantly, like to talk to these people that have such a huge role in the music industry, entertainment lawyers, and even, of course, like the musicians. And it was phenomenal. And I had a conversation with, this is so ridiculous, I'm going to say this because I usually don't talk about so many experiences like this, but I had a conversation with Paul McCartney, of all people, ironically. He was under the stage. So they did my spot when they announced me during the Grammy Awards, underneath the stage. And I just for the TV promo, if you will, the TV aspect. And I was finishing that up and I was leaving, and Paul McCartney was coming in. He was surrounded by like 10 people. Like, he had to get on stage. He was performing. I think he was performing with Beck, or another. No, it wasn't Beck. It was another performer on stage. And he's like, "Oh, who is this man? Who's this young man right here?" And my talent handler was like, "Oh, this is Jared Cassedy. He's just became the recipient of the Grammy." And he was like, he stopped everything. They were trying to get him on stage. Like, you got to go. He's like, "No, I want to hear what this guy's about." And he talked with me for just a couple minutes. And he said, I will remember this till the day I die. He's like, "You are the real deal. You're making it happen." And I was like, for Paul McCartney, of all people in the world to say this, who has, he was the most down to earth and most humble person. And for him to say those words was life shattering. It was incredible.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about telling that story. I think that's what listeners want to hear. I mean, it certainly gives me a little thrill to think that one of our own was talking to Paul McCartney at the Grammys.
Yeah, it was insane. Like that entire experience, and even just sitting, because I sat with all, like, you think they'd have me sat like further back, but I was in the midst of all the A-list celebrities. I sat next to Wiz Khalifa and Lady Gaga. I talked to her, and I can tell you one funny story. And you can cut this out if you need to. But I told the kids today, it was the end of the Grammy Awards. My talent handler had come and gotten me. She was bringing me with my husband back to underneath the stage, being let out to the after party, they have the after parties, which are for the celebrities, but they also have after parties for like people that are just coming to the Grammy Awards and stuff. She was a little confused. And in the meanwhile, I'm meeting like David Grohl. I had a picture with him, who's awesome. And Sharon, all these people. And I'm like literally following behind Kanye West and Kim Kardashian with their bodyguard. I'm following them with my husband. My talent agent's leading us out. We get to this hallway in the LA Convention Center. It's like a concrete stairwell. The door closes behind us, and we're like locked in this room, this concrete room with Kanye West, Kim Kardashian, and their bodyguard, and my talent handler. Just us for like minutes, and people are pounding. We were locked in that room, and Kanye West is like, "What's going on?" I was like, "I don't know what's going on." Oh my gosh, we were like stuck in a room with them, and like their bodyguard was pounding on the door, and finally someone came to open the door. Our talent handler didn't realize that we weren't supposed to go to that part of the building, obviously, for the pickups for all the celebrities and stuff. But I will forever remember being locked in a room with Kim and Kanye. Like, what's up with that?
That's extraordinary. So I had Mickey Smith Jr. on the show last year, and he's he's one of the more recent winners of the Grammy Music Educator Award. And, one of the things, he's really about relationships and the kids. And you mentioned that earlier. Can we talk into that a little bit more, that building relationships with kids, building that culture up that creates such success?
Oh my gosh. I never look at my students as being too young. I don't look at them as being just beginners when they're like middle schoolers. I don't look at them I look at them as people. They're human beings. And I said this earlier in our session tonight, is that people at the end of the day, They just want to feel valued, cared for, and supported. I think we lose sight of that. Students want to feel that from their teachers. Teachers want to feel that from their administration. Myself as an administrator, I want to feel that from my school committee and my administration. It's something that human beings, it's part of our human makeup, if you will. And when you take the time to get to know your students in an authentic and contextual way that makes you it's one thing to kind of get to know your kids, yes, but to really invest in who they are, to show up for them, to have their back, that's where it changes things. And they do the same thing for you as well. And I treasure those moments. I could be going through like a regular day and I'd be like, oh, I'm just thinking about my students, how they're doing. I'll shoot them all a message on Remind, like there's a Remind app that I send them a message, just check in everybody, hope you're having a great day. Something simple as that. And they always like give me thumbs up or smiley faces and stuff. It could be something as small as that, to literally like when they come into rehearsals, sitting down next to them as they're getting their instruments together and being like, hey, how was your basketball game? And, this and that. To also like, following up with them via email. Like, regardless if a kid is in first grade, kindergarten, or a senior in high school, they want that human interaction. If there's one thing that this time in school closure and this remote hybrid world that we're living in has taught us, is that is the primary focus of education to begin with. When you develop relationships and connections with students and each other and your colleagues, that lays the automatic strongest foundation for the most amazing performances of Lincolnshire Posey, for the most amazing performances of Gustav Holst suites. You know what I mean? Because there's that energy that's felt. You have each other's backs, and it's so true. So true. I trust my students as I would trust any other person in my life that are my best friends, my family members. They're an extension of who I am. They're an extension of my family. And I think that you have to relish that. You're not taking advantage of it. You're just living it, and you're celebrating it. People need to be celebrated.
All right, Jared, we've been going for a while. We're going to get to these final questions at the end, but I want to ask you, before we move there, do you have any final thoughts for directors who are listening, maybe lessons or maybe advice that you might want to give that we haven't already touched on?
Yeah, of course. There's a few things I think about. The first is, we're talking about relationships. Yes. I also have this idea, and actually my husband, who is also an educator, talks to me about this a lot, especially when we first started getting to know each other. This idea of leading with a spirit of generosity, okay? I have found it to be one of the most impactful aspects of my makeup as a human being. This idea that people make mistakes, people have to overcome challenges, you have to meet them where they're at. You don't just give the benefit of the doubt and say that's it, but you lead with the spirit of generosity, understanding them, becoming empathetic and tolerant of where they've come from, what their experience has been like. I work with some pretty incredible teachers, and I also work with some pretty incredible teachers who have had a really intense background. I work with students who are the most amazing students ever that have also come from the most challenging backgrounds as well. You never know where someone's coming from if you don't stop and listen. And you lead with that spirit of generosity. So that's my first thing I was going to say. The other thing, I have this triad, if you will, no pun intended with the whole entire music aspect of it, but I call it the 3 Ps. And I've talked to some other music educators. I give some workshops on it. It's called the 3 Ps. And I talk about how it redefines success. So I talk about passion. Like everybody thinks everybody's a passionate teacher. I think I'm a passionate teacher. I love what I'm doing. I bring lots of energy to what I do. But passion only goes so far if you don't have a purpose. I talk about purpose is really, really important. Defining your why, defining what drives you. Then that passion can be played. That energy can be placed into defining that purpose. And then in order to make that purpose come to fruition, you have to have that level of perseverance, that work ethic to make it happen. Okay, so it's like, and when you have all those 3 things going on, passion, purpose, perseverance, and kind of like the cycle back and forth from one another, that's where joy happens. That's where the real magic happens. I see, some of my students, they thrive in purpose. Their purpose is to get good grades, to get into Ivy League schools, and they have the work ethic to do it. But I can't say they have necessarily the passion because it's something that's expected of them from perhaps their parents, something expected to them based on their community or their backgrounds. I also see people that have lots of passion and lots of purpose, but they don't have the work ethic or the continued ability to persevere through the challenges. So it kind of just fizzles out. And I also see people that have the work ethic and the passion, but they don't have the purpose. So like kind of turns in like things don't ever come to fruition because there's no real specific guiding point. So I always think about that idea of passion, purpose, and perseverance. This idea that those three entities of ourselves as people really, really define, like, it comes back to our vision and our joy in learning and our joy in living, So those are two things that I would say in terms of lessons I would purvey to directors of all levels. Identify your passion, your purpose, your perseverance, lead with a constant spirit of generosity, meeting people where they're at, and investment in each other, investing in relationships in each other. It's huge. And on top of that, Mark, you have to invest in yourself. And especially during these times where we're so stressed out because of our learning environment, in order to fill other people's cups, you have to have your cup filled first.
Remember your first term of teaching? Learning all the skills that you don't get taught in music school? Managing a transitioning culture in your classroom? Finding out that you have to teach guitar this term? During those early years, we found out that leaning on a community of music educators was important, not only for building that knowledge in ourselves, but also maintaining enough sanity to serve the students right in front of us. Amused is a podcast centered around a community of music teachers. Between the four of us, we teach choir, band, orchestra, general, jazz, and marching band at the elementary through collegiate levels. We certainly don't have all the answers, but you're welcome to listen in while we try to find them. Join us while we work through the challenges of music teaching and celebrate the joy of bringing music making into the lives of young people. In each episode, you'll hear stories, both good and bad, about that week of teaching, and we'll try and tackle an issue that one of us is struggling with. Something we're all taught is that music brings people together, but being the only teacher in your subject at a site can be really isolating. We think everyone ought to be a part of a community, and you're welcome to come join ours. Episodes come out on Wednesdays during the school year, and you can find us wherever you get your podcasts and at amusedcast.org.
All right, let's get on to these final questions. These are questions that I ask of all my guests, and they're big questions, and so you just answer them from your perspective, and there's no right or wrong here. All right, the first of these is, where do you draw the line between healthy and unhealthy competition in music?
Oh, indeed. So when it comes to competition in music in general, because of my storied past, I guess, with the piano aspect of it, I think we have to redefine what competition means, what excellence means, especially in these days where we are right now, redefining what success actually means. This idea of I hear it all the time. Lexington holds a high level of excellence. I was like, but is excellence just a perfect performance? Is excellence getting a perfect score on the SATs, or is excellence in terms of being a good person and having good qualities and excellent qualities? You know what I mean? Competition in case, competition in what sense? Are we competing with ourselves? Are we competing for the purpose of being better than other folks to show that we are better than other folks? Or is competition used as a checkpoint to say, this is where we are within our journey as an educator? Journey as a musician, I should say. So I always talk about competition. Of course, we want to get feedback. I think about competition as healthy when it's about feedback. It's about getting insight about your playing, insight about where you are within your journey, things like that. I also think that when it comes to competition, it can skew a director's approach to their kids. So there's a difference between having high expectations and being hard on students. High expectations empowers. Yes, we are going to do this. We are going to work. We can do this. We have this challenge ahead of us. We're not there yet, but we will with this, this constant investment in each other, this hard work. Versus being hard on students. I've seen so many directors in my career over the past 17 years where the directors are yelling at their kids and they're screaming at them. You're missing this. You can't get this. Why is this still not coming? And the kids end up performing out of fear, So when you use competition as a means of having kids perform out of fear, that's definitely not healthy. I want them to raise the high expectations of themselves as musicians, to showcase themselves at their best level possible, to get the feedback to, again, continue that trajectory of development through further practice.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about fear. My music ed professor, when I was an undergrad, was very old school. He started his teaching in the 40s. And he told us in our woodwind methods class, he was giving out all his advice. And one of the things he said one day, and I'll never forget it, there's always fear in the classroom. Either you fear the students or the students fear you. And I can't really imagine that anymore.
No, I don't want my students to feel fear. I want them to feel high expectations and like wanted to reach beyond, but in an empowered way, you know?
All right, Jared. We know the old joke about first car in, last car out. How do you find a work-life balance in your career?
It has happened because of my own personal life, I think. I'm so thankful I have a husband who is also an educator, who's also a musician. He understands the constraints in terms of like my life is like. So when I first started dating him and when we got married and everything like that, he understood where my job was. We just recently, we have 2 children that are adopted. We have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. And that in itself is my work-life balance. When I come home from school, from work, I need to be dad. I need to be on the floor with my kids. I need to be feeding them. I need to be like hanging out with them, because the innate responsibility to be a parent is so important, of course. So that's like a direct sobering in a good way. Look at in terms of what I have to do or whatnot. I think that it's evolved. To be honest, when I first started my career, I would absolutely be at school by 5:30 in the morning and not leave until 10 o'clock at night as a middle school band director. Even I'm doing lesson plans and everything like that. I think what I've learned over time is that, first of all, working with a team is super important. Second of all, is making priorities and sticking to those priorities. I'm a big list guy. I would say on the outside, I look really, really organized. I'm very, very efficient, I think. I'm very, very I have my list and everything like that. Inside my head, it's a different story. There's like arrows going everywhere, and there's like road runners running all over the place, and there's like thoughts everywhere. So I force myself to stay organized. And I think that that's one thing to keep in mind as well. As a director, I remember thinking when I was younger, I've got to get all this done. I've got to get this done. Well, let's make a list and just get it out of my craziness inside my head, and just visually having it out there helps me kind of, first of all, get it out, and also helps me organize and prioritize what needs to get done. I have hot, warm, and cool items on my list, things that can be held off for, things that have to be done immediately. So it's about organization, definitely.
Yeah. So do you use an app or do you do that on paper? How do you do it?
Oh, so it's so simple for me. It's kind of a simple thing to do. I just have my computer. I have like a Mac, so I have sticky notes on my computer, and I just have and I just like each day I write down what I need to get done. I have my written out, so I have my regular calendar, of course, but I have a sticky note, and I put down each day, type it out, and I type down my meeting schedule and my class schedule, as well as the tasks that need to be done that day. And I just like randomly, when I have some time, write it down. Sometimes I think the way people procrastinate and the way people get overwhelmed is because there's so much going on that, like, oh my gosh, it seems so overwhelming. Just get it down on paper. Or on just write it down on a sticky note or something like that. It helps.
All right, Jared, this is the big question. And what are the challenges facing music education or band, and how do we best meet them?
Right. Well, right now, this is a really kind of it's not an easy question, but it's a very sobering question, because where we are right now, programs are being cut like crazy because of budget restraints, because of teachers being needed to teach in other content areas, because of school closure, because of remote learning, because of not a full return. Lexington I feel blessed to be working there every single day, because they maintain all of our jobs. Everyone has the same responsibilities. They didn't cut any programs, versus many districts around me cut back on beginning lessons not starting at all, completely got rid of music programs. Music teachers are now aides to other classroom teachers in other subject areas. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges we're faced with right now, is what are we going to look like moving forward into not only way in the future, but even just to the end of the year, or even to the beginning of next year. What we need to do, and I know we say this all the time, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So the more we can do right now to get ourselves out in front. One of the reasons why I think that Lexington was so supportive of what we were doing is that we came to them with solutions to begin with. So we knew that this fall term was going to be a mess. It's not because of Lexington, it's just because of how it is right now in the pandemic. We met as a team in different cohorts for elementary music, middle school general music, chorus, band, orchestra, jazz, everything, and formulated our ideas. And we created solutions and scenarios that did not end up with us just being like, we need the arts need to stay in our schools and things like that. No, we said, this is some of the things that we think are going to be major concerns coming into the school year. I, as the program leader, had the opportunity to communicate and connect with other building administrators, my assistant superintendent, my superintendent of schools. And again, it wasn't about me being like, the arts are important, because I think they'd understand that. But it's like, this is how we're looking at the arts, still performing arts, still remaining as a program in the midst of this pandemic. What do you think? So therefore, because I think sometimes districts get so overwhelmed with all the details that happen to have to manage an entire school district, that if they don't have solutions or have any experience even in the arts, if you will, because a lot of administrators don't, they're going to be quick to be like, okay, there's so many other priorities that are more important. When you can come to them with answers and solutions already, maybe not perfectly, if you will, but just get the conversation in a collaborative, and it goes back to relationships, a collaborative and meaningful way in that sense. Be like, hey, what do you think about this? Or how can we make this happen? How can we help you as district leadership and school committee? How can we help you articulate what can happen with our program moving forward? They're going to appreciate that a lot more versus having, if we just showed up with pitchforks, being like, you got to keep our arts programs. I think that's what we're trying to say as well, but let's help them out. Again, it comes back to that communication and that connection.
All right, Jared, I just invented a time machine, and I'm going to take you back to the afternoon of your high school graduation. What are you going to tell yourself?
Oh my gosh. The one thing I would tell myself, and it's funny that you say this question, because actually someone asked me this the other day. I would say to myself, everything happens for a reason. Of course, I'm a fast talker. I have lots of energy. I can get stressed and things like that. Back when I was in high school, college, and my first years teaching, I was pretty impulsive. I used to get stressed out. I'm really, really hard on myself. I'm still hard on myself. But what I've realized, and I look at my career, I look at my life, I look at my family, everything happens for a reason. Even when you feel at your absolute lowest, everything happens for a reason. And it's up to you to make that choice, to change that mindset and be like, okay, I can make it through this, And I think that I think, things happen for a reason, and I think that I would also have to say to myself, you have to enjoy every moment and have the confidence that the decisions that I make along the way, even if they're not the right decision at the time, and it might not have the best outcomes, you made that decision for a reason, and it's going to make you a better person later on.
All right, Jared, if you had a choice and could control this somehow, what would be the final work for wind ensemble or band that you'd want to conduct or listen to or perform?
Oh gosh. I can't, I'm going to cheat the question, I guess. Because I think that there's so many works. I'm also one of those people, I find beauty in all types of music. It could be the most abstract thing or the most beautiful thing or the most, that's beautiful as well. Or, the most part of the canon, when it comes to wind band literature. I'm going to switch it up a little bit. I can say, if I had to conduct music of one last composer, would that work?
Sure. But at some point you have to make a decision here.
Right. Okay. So I would have to say the music, it would be any piece of music by Julie Giroux. I'm not saying that because she's been so on the forefront of wind band literature and composition, and she has amazing accolades and things like that. But I'm sure lots of people are friends with her on Facebook or have seen her in conferences and things like that. She is an amazing musician and composer, yes. But who she is as a person is one of the most selfless people you will ever meet. And the stories and the thought and the mindfulness, I was talking about selecting repertoire earlier, I'm very deliberate because I want to make sure the music is not just written so a composer is getting the money per se. Not that, all composers do that. But she is so thoughtful and mindful about what she's writing music for. We did a piece by her. I guess this would be one of the pieces that I would do. It was a piece I did with the Wind Ensemble in Lexington, my first year here. And it's not the most difficult piece by her. It's called The Grace in Being. It's a grade level 3-4 piece. And my Wind Ensemble was they only play grade 5 and 6 music. They're like, what is this piece of music? And I went to a conference with Julie, where Julie presented at the New England Band Directors Institute a few years ago. And she shared the story and background of this piece of music, what it was written for. Her friend passing away. He ends up coming out in his last moments of life to her. It was a beautiful story. And so I use this piece of music as a means to reach and contextualize stuff for my students, right? So I've been talking about. So at my students, I said, we rehearsed this piece only in a circle, in a standing circle. They were not allowed to sit except if they were a bassoonist or tubist. our tuba player. We were standing in a circle every rehearsal that we did this. I would pull back layers of the piece every time we went through. It was like probably like a good 2.5-2-month process, if you will, where eventually I told them what the piece was about. But I asked them, what does the word grace mean? What does the word being mean? And there's like a motif that she writes in the piece of music that's so simple. It's played by the flute at the very beginning, and it continues to remain. It develops a little bit, but it's pretty much it. And I asked them, guys, what is a core value? And I said, define what a core value is. And so I had them do this like writing assignment where they talked about their own core values, and they talked about, empathy, something I hold near and dear to my heart or whatnot. So anyway, we talk about this, and I said, this theme is like the core value of the piece of music. And then, so we went through it and peeled more and more of that. By the end of that rehearsal period and to the performance, we actually did this at a festival as well. It was amazing to see the transformation that they had in their approach to music making, to that piece of music, yes, but also to their own value of themselves to that piece of music. We did that piece completely, ironically, you're saying, what piece would I want to conduct? We actually did that piece unconducted. It's a slow piece. It's a hard piece to do unconducted. But the way they related to each other and the experience, I think that would be the piece I would do as a final work. Because it meant so much to us as human beings, So, the Grace and Being by Giroux. You got it out of me.
Yep. Well, I mean, Julie's a special person. There's no question.
Amazing person.
All right, Jared, this is an odd question in the middle of a global pandemic. But is there anything coming up that you would like to share or promote?
Sure. So the first thing is I talked about our students doing that piece of music by Omar Thomas of Our New Day Begun. And we're actually working with a company called Arts Laureates to put together all the click tracks and the video components. But we're also adding, like I was saying, we're going to be adding student commentary, written words, quotes, things like that about how this piece of music has enabled them to consider their positions around racism, around acceptance and tolerance and empathy, around civil rights, human rights. And what we're hoping to do is create this presentation. And even though we're not gonna be able to play it live and perform it live, but have it broadcast and streamed to families, to the town of Lexington. Because Lexington, what I love about them is that they're such a liberal community. They are like so very much about civil and human rights. It's beautiful. And again, it just showcases like our commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion around those themes. So that's one product we're working on, which is fantastic. I guess the other thing that I would say is I'm going to be completely honest with you. Right before holiday break, right before December break, I was probably 2 weeks before then. I like to think I'm a positive person. I was having a really, really difficult time though. Here I am talking about like connections and meeting and things like this and people in my lives and relationships. And I was just like, you know what? I just want to have a rehearsal with my kids. I want to have them in front of me. I was getting downtrodden. I was trying not to it was really hard to be positive. I hit my wall, and here I am trying to support my teachers as well. So vacation came, and right before the first of the year, I was reading some ideas, some articles on gratitude, and it seems so simple. Gratitude is something that is, transformative. So what I do, it's on social media, on my own social media project. I have this project called #Project Grateful for You. That's the number 4 and the letter U. And so every single day, and I've done this every single day since January 1st, I'm going to do it for the entire year. I basically write a letter of gratitude on social media and tag the person that I'm speaking about. It could be my old band director from high school. It could be like an old friend that taught me how to ride my bike. That was actually my first post was my friend Jamie, who I've not talked to since I was in elementary school. She taught me how to ride a bike back when we were 7 years old. To people in my life, my family, and it's amazing. Gratitude, you cannot be upset. You can't be angry. You can't be frustrated when you're writing to someone thanking them for being in your life or being who they are or transforming you or things like that. And then along with it, it's like a ripple effect because I post, and what I love, this is my favorite part of the project, is that other folks that read the post that also know that person or that don't know that person are also commenting about that person. So it adds this like ripple effect where the gratitude pays it forward. And the person, of course, is just always so thankful and whatnot. I'm thankful to the person. It's totally, there's no pretense from me. There's no job. It's just a way to honor that individual that's had an impact. And then again, like that, it just turned into a domino effect. It's a beautiful project. So if you're ever online, if you look me up on Facebook, you'll see all my project, hashtag Project Grateful for You posts or whatnot. It's been pretty amazing, pretty transformative. And it keeps me so positive and happy every day.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Jared, how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so absolutely. Facebook, I'm always there. Jared Cassedy, just look my name up. By the way, I'm spelled Cassedy. That's the last name. It's funny, my great uncle did a whole entire project on our genealogy. I'm also adopted myself, but with our family name, all the Cassedy spellings of Cassedy in the United States are blood relatives. Is that interesting? Because most people think Cassidy, but all the EDYs are blood related, which is interesting. So on Facebook, of course, I am on Instagram and Twitter, but not as much. I'm trying to get, again, I need some social media help here, showing my age, I guess, a little bit with using those tools a little bit more. But also you can email me at jcassedy@lexingtonma.org. You can always email me there. And yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Jared, thank you for being such a model band director and an example of the way to teach music the correct way. I really appreciate that you gave me some time.
Oh, of course. This has been incredible. I was so thrilled that you reached out to me about this. I love this project that you're doing. I've heard so many of the podcasts here as well. And to be a part of this it's been like kind of a bucket list item. So thank you so much for offering it.
Well, thanks. You were stuck in a room with Kanye and Kim, and I'm a bucket list item. Thanks for pumping up my ego tonight.
Of course. It's been a pleasure.